everyone, Clark the Geek here, and welcome to this overdue review of the recent Doctor Who missing episode animation of Galaxy 4, the William Hartnell story, the first William Hartnell story that's been animated in about 8 years. The last one we got was The 10th Planet, which was like 2013 when that got animated, part 4. And yeah, we're getting a Hartnell story, and this is one that I was, again, on my missing episode prediction video from 2021, I wanted this one, and I'm so glad that we got it. I know not most people weren't clamouring for this one, but I really was, because it's a story that I love the surviving part 3 that we see. I've always loved that ever since I watched it, and I just, I feel like it would be kind of my kind of story, that sort of pulp 60s sci-fi adventure that I really gravitate towards, and I was so glad to see an animation of this, and I think it was, a feasible one to do for a Hartnell, and I think it was time for them to do some Hartnell, because as much as I love Troughton, we need a bit of Hartnell representation in the animation. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to be talking about the animation and the story. So let's get to it. So the previous animation was Evil of the Daleks, which I'm still going to stand by from my original view, that is my favourite of the missing episode animations. And if we're just going off the recent ones, so like sort of Macra Terror onwards, I'd say this is a little bit of a step down. I'd say it's obviously not as good as Evil of the Daleks. I'd say it's also not as good as the Macra Terror. I'd say it's around sort of... Well, it's better than, obviously, the Web of Fear, and it's better than Fury from the Deep. I would say it's sort of around, like, the Faceless ones, where it is... I still really like it, but there are some issues with it. But overall, I think it is a pretty good animation, to be fair. I think the character designs are quite cool. I like the sort of... the more overtly cartoony nature with them. They kind of remind me of some of the older ones, like the Invasion animation or the Ice Warriors animation, where they're more overtly cartoony in their design, and it's somewhat a little bit different from what we've seen from, the recent animations, but it's a style that I could, get on board with, and I quite liked it, although I think you do lose some of the expression with them, I think, more so with the Dravins, actually, because obviously they're meant to be like a clone race, but in the original episode, they're all played by, different actors, and I think with this, because they use the same character model for all of the Dravins except Marga, you lose that expression. So, there are obviously pluses and there are takeaways with it. And also the character animation as well, with the sort of, the running effects. I think with, especially, something like the running, I think this is really improved on that. You see them, it's not just them running sort of, like sideways. You don't just see them, you see them running towards the camera. It's a bit different, and they've very much improved upon that from previous ones, because that's not something that you saw in the older ones. I think in terms of the characters, the highlight probably is the Chumblies, the little robots. I think, for robots, they're incredibly expressive. I love them, the models used for them. They're really well done, their action sequences are really good. And as I said, they're just really expressive, and they were a real treat, visually. Now let's talk about the landscapes and settings. So the actual planet looks gorgeous, the sort of almost like Australian outback-inspired kind of, landscapes of the planet with the reds and oranges. It looks gorgeous. You've also got the Dravin spaceship, which, I don't know. It's this real 3D sort of really intricately detailed 3D model, and it really clashes with the very cartoonish models of the characters. I think they should have just gone with a more 2D style that fit with the character models. And then you've got the real spaceship which feels kind of just like an empty hall. I don't know. I think they could have done a bit more to it, and also the colours. A lot of people have criticised it, and I'm kind of mixed on this bit, because I like their, the pulp 60s sci-fi colourful aesthetic, but I think they should have focused in this case more on the lighting, instead of just having the walls painted red, yellow, green, purple, etc. Have it lit those colours, and maybe have them as a base, but then focus more on the lighting. I think that's what would make it better in that case. You've also got some great action spectacle, there's some really great little action sequences that with the the animation they can do, which they probably couldn't do in the 60s, so some of the fight scenes with the Dravins and the Rills and the Chumblies and whatnot, it's really good stuff, and they sort of improve on what we see. So in episode 1 with Marga's monologue, they show the little spaceship skirmish with the Rills and the Dravins, and then how they got stranded on this planet. It's really good, a real enhancement of the story, and we actually have the surviving footage of that, so it really does enhance it. And also at the end of the story, you actually see the planet exploding, and that's a real visual treat. There's some great spectacle in this story, and so the animation overall is very good. It's not perfect, but I think I think it's pretty good, to be fair. As for the story, it's nothing mind-blowing. It's not a groundbreaking story, but it's one that I am very warm to. It's one of those, pulp 60s sci-fi adventures, like The Keys of Marinus, like The Space Museum, one of those stories. The Rescue is another one where it's that sort of, that real sense of adventure that that sort of really quirky. It's something that I gravitate towards, and this part in the Hartnell era where it's that real sense of adventure that I really gravitate towards, and it's a very warm feeling, and it's one that I thoroughly enjoy watching, even if the story isn't anything groundbreaking. I love the TARDIS team in this. Obviously, Hartnell is amazing. He's quite witty, he's quite fun, but he's really nice. And there's always, I think, Hartnell's just great. I love the companions. Stephen's quite cool, sort of a action, and obviously Vicky. I think Vicky's great. She's personally my favourite Hartnell companion of them all. Personally, I've always loved Vicky. I think she's just great, and that applies here. I do like her in this story. The Dravins are a really cool villain, the really cool race of villains. And obviously got their leader, Marga, who is quite good. She's got a real screen presence with some great monologues, and with not only in the animation but also in the surviving episode 3 and the surviving clips that we can see. Because this story does have a fair few surviving bits of footage. Like episode 1 has about 6. Anyway. I can't remember the actor's name, but she's really good. She has a real screen presence. She's a really good main villain, and her clones are also really good. But it's you do kind of feel sorry for her because she's very much alone in this. Her clones, they can't really think for themselves. You do kind of feel sorry for her, but at the same time, she's quite a menacing villain. I think she's quite effective. And it's almost the first time that Doctor Who kind of did a red herring villain. Because in this story at the start, the Rills, the disgusting, these disgusting creatures are perceived to be the villains, and the Dravins are meant to be, the good guys, the beautiful Dravins. It's a classic kind of don't judge a book by its cover, but it was the first time they kind of did a twist villain, subverting your expectation in Doctor Who. And you've got to remember, these are the early years of Doctor Who. It's like with the Aztecs and how that's the first story that really plays around with the time and not changing history and all that stuff. This is probably the first instance, I think, of Doctor Who doing the whole twist villain kind of thing. And I think it's really nice, and I love the message of obviously they don't judge a book by its cover, but the whole thing of the Doctor, the Rills might appear disgusting, but they're friendly and want to help, and I think that's a really nice message, especially since Doctor Who in this time was meant for it was designed as a kid show, and it was meant to be more educational to kids. And I think messages like these, and respect all people, and no matter what they look like or whatever. I think that's a really nice message, and I think there's a line that the Doctor says. It's like, we respect you as we respect all life. It's just a lovely line, and it's just a really lovely message, especially for younger audiences. And I think it's just really, really good. So overall, as I said, it's nothing groundbreaking. It's not a masterpiece of a story. It's not like the War Games or the War Machines or Genesis of the Daleks or whatever. It's not one of those kind of stories. But if you want a real good time, then I'd give this one a watch. And I think it's really underrated. I think it's a really fun, quirky little story, and do give it a second go if you weren't too keen on it the first time. I think it really has that sort of sense of adventure, and it's one of the last stories in the Hartnell era that I would say has that, because I think this was actually the last proper story that the original producer of Doctor Who, Very Lambert, produced. So they were handing the torch over for the first time in Doctor Who's history. So it was a bit of a turbulent time in Doctor Who's history, but this marked the end of an era almost for Doctor Who, and it was an era that I was very, very fond of, and so I'm going to give that Galaxy 4 as a story an 8 out of 10. I don't know what I'm going to score the animation, but I'll just say it is very good, but with a few issues. So that's the animation rating, I suppose. So hope you enjoyed it. Have you got Galaxy 4, the animation? What do you think? Do you like the animation? What do you think of that? What do you think of the actual story? Let me know all that in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe. Click the bell so you don't miss a thing. And this is Clack of the Geek, signing out. Goodbye, everyone.